Welcome to Evilive, the live media commentary show that answers the question, how long does my spoon have to be to sup with the devil? Subscribe if you're new to the channel because today we are reviewing The High King. And this is the Chronicles of Prydain, Book 5 by Lloyd Alexander. It was originally published by Holt, Reinhardt, and Winston on October 27, 1968. This is the conclusion to the entire Chronicles. And what a conclusion it was, if we're going to be honest. It had a lot of really great elements in it. Ultimately, it's very derivative of everything from the King Arthur legend to Lord of the Rings, of course. So, it is its own thing, but it feels very, very familiar at the same time. And so it's hard not to compare it to some other great fables or great stories when it is so similar in some of the aspects. But again, because of its originality in other areas, maybe not the overarching thematical areas, ultimately it's the hero's journey that Taran is going on. And so everything, of course, is sort of wrapped around these similar ideas and tales throughout all of human history, really. So I can't really fault it for that. And the truth was, this story got me. There's some moments in this where I was finding myself infinitely more emotional than I had anticipated. And it may be because other stuff is going on in life, but it really did get me in a couple parts. So let's talk about this. This was awarded the Newbery Medal for Excellence in American Children's Literature in 1969. It is seen as the best, if not one of the best books in the entire Chronicles, the 5 different books. There's another collection out there of I think it's short stories based around Taran and Prydain and stuff, but I've had my fill. I'm done. I'm not going to review those or read them. So it sets up where it's right after Taran the Wanderer, the last book. And Taran's returning back to Caer Dallben, and he realizes that Eilonwy, this young woman that he has fallen in love with, is down at Caer Dallben. And so he's really excited to get back there as soon as possible. And as soon as he gets there, he sees that she actually came back with Prince Rune. But Prince Rune is no longer a prince because his father sadly died. He is now king. He's as bumbling and arguably useless as always, so it's not like it's a huge high honor that changed him at all. It's just a huge high honor to be king. But if he's king, why is he taking Eilonwy to Caer Dallben? He should be staying in his kingdom, watching over his kingdom. Whatever. So anyway, she is incredibly excited to see Taran. He is incredibly excited to see her. And Gurgi is always excited just to be involved, if we're being honest. And then suddenly we see Flutterflam and Prince Gwydion come down. And Prince Gwydion's almost dead. And so, everyone's sort of paying attention and trying to heal him up. Arawn, the once evil enchantress, who's now working at Caer Dallben, after they defeated her and sort of stripped her of her magic, she is tending to his wounds, and it turns out that Flutterflam and Gwydion thought they saw Taran calling to him, to come over and help, and so they chased down to help him, only to see that it wasn't Taran at all. It was some of the hunters of Arawn Deathlord, and they all surprised them and swarmed the two kings, well, the prince and the king, and almost kill Gwydion and steal his sword. Now, you'll remember his sword is Dyrnwyn, which is this ancient magical sword that has not fulfilled its own prophecy that Eilonwy took out of the Spiral Castle, which then ultimately destroyed the Spiral Castle, which was also Ocaryn's home at the time. Just kind of, shitty to do. But what are you going to do? She didn't know she was doing it, so you can't really blame her. So this magical sword is taken straight to Arawn Deathlord. At least that's what everyone believes, because it was his hunt masters that had stolen it from Gwydion. And so Ocaryn is furious. He has the last element to destroy and conquer all of Prydain, the sword Dyrnwyn. She wants to stop him more now than ever before. Because, originally, Arawn is just this terrible presence in the distance. He has no real invasion plans because they destroyed the Black Cauldron, so he can't generate a Cauldron-born force anymore. He only has whatever Cauldron-born he had left, and no one really knows how many of those are. But all of the lesser kingdoms are all aligned with the King of Man, the High King. And so why would any of them side with Arawn at this point? It doesn't make any sense that they would. And so they figure, look, if we can just get over to Caer-Codorn, we can sort of rally all the kings together, and we can figure out a way to strike back at Arawn. Well, Oghran wants to strike out at Arawn immediately, and she takes the horse and goes on her own, which is foolish and ridiculous, but she does it. And so everyone goes to Caer-Codorn to get that king's help and to sort of rest up before they all charge out to the Death Lord's land. And when they're there, they realize that Mag, the chief steward of Mona that stole Eilonwy off on behalf of Oghran 2 or 3 books back, he has taken over, and he's been promised by Arawn the crown so that he can rule the Death Lord's lands in his, as he's the High King. Mag can end up being just the king of Arawn or something, or Arawn's lands. So he actually captures Taran and the king and a bunch of them. And so Eilonwy and Gurgi and Flutterflam are late to get there, and they realize that something's wrong. The banner's not up, showing that everyone's around, and so they're a little bit suspicious. Gwistil, one of the fair folk that helped them in earlier book, who is known as very flighty and strange and quirky, but actually an incredibly good warrior, ends up helping rescue everyone. In the course of the rescue, King Rune, who is with Flutterflam and Eilonwy, ends up distracting all of the Arawn's army, all the forces, in order to allow Taran and the king to get out of the Caer. And ultimately, he ends up sacrificing his life for it. So we have this first sacrifice of the whole book, and it's King Rune doing something on the benefit, for the greater good. And you can't really ask for a better death as a soldier or a fighter or a king. And so they all mourn him appropriately. Prince Gwydion is now healed up enough to go to battle, and everyone meets up in Caer-Dathel to prepare for the greater war. However, as soon as King Prydain arrives from his forces of the north, he reveals that he is sided with Arawn for some reason, and he is actually there with this massive force to stop them from invading Arawn's lands and stopping the evil king. And they are so outnumbered that there's just literally no hope that they're going to win. The best they can do is try to escape with their lives, really. And so they have this massive battle, and they end up losing. They lose Caer-Codorn, Caer-Dathel, and they have to flee to the hills. And so as soon as they get to the hills and they sort of figure out who is still alive and who is, who actually has forces, they realize that Cole, the old veteran warrior who almost raised Taran as a young man, who was, sort of taking care of the garden stuff, he died. And so now Taran is going through suffering and mourning and pain, and we have to feel the weight of that loss as well. And this is the point where it's really starting to hit me, emotionally, surprisingly, admittedly, but it is. And ultimately, the groups decide, well, we have to invade Arawn now, and we have to try to stop him now. The Cauldron-born have been, they helped invade and take over Caer-Dathel. And so they know that there's still some Cauldron-born left, and there's nothing you can do about them. They can't die. And so you fight them, but you're going to end up being killed by them if you face them. And so they're all routing in different ways and trying to get into Arawn's land separately. Gwydion's going one direction. Taran and his army of the Kamat people are going in a different direction, and they end up trying to overtake the Cauldron-born to stop them from getting back, because the further away they are from Arawn's lands, the weaker they get, and so they just come out as a sort of a strike force or something. And so they're fleeing back to the castle to sort of protect Arawn Deathlord. And Taran's trying to cut them off. They try to go, they run into Dolly, the dwarf fairfolk, who takes them into this underground cavern, and they end up, it ends up collapsing because that stupid giant boy named Glue is just a piece of garbage character that I can't stand at all. He ends up like collapsing the tunnel, so they can't continue that way. They have to come back out. That's when he reunites with Eilenwy, and they find Ochren almost dead, and really in severe pain. She was beaten down by the huntsmen of Arawn and left for dead. And so they start, giving her back some life and stuff. And she tells them, look, the best way is to go over the Mount Dragon. And that seems like the most imposing and possible way, but she said that the other ways that they were going to go faced massive cliffs and stuff, and so it would take them even longer. And so they end up trusting her and agreeing to go to where she wants, and so they go up to the mountain. Taran ends up finding Dyrnwyn, the sword, the magical sword that was stolen from Prince Gwydion. Ochren, I'm sorry, I get these A names mixed up so bad. Arawn Deathlord put it in Mount Dragon, thinking no one would ever go there to find it. And then so he sort of hid it there. Because if he was invaded by Prince Gwydion's forces or the High King's forces, they would never find it, because, of course, it's not in his keep. And so Taran finds it, and they end up assaulting the Cauldron-born. And one of the prophecies, one of the powers of this Dyrnwyn magical sword is that if you strike one Cauldron-born and kill it, it kills all of the Cauldron-born. And so he completely decimates all of those skirmish forces. And then he meets up at the actual keep with Prince Gwydion and everyone, and goes inside. They find all the storeroom of all the stolen treasures that Arawn stole. And Arawn pretends to be Prince Gwydion, asking for Dyrnwyn back, and Taran almost gives it to him, but then he realizes it's not actually Prince Gwydion, and it's just Arawn doing his illusion magic. And so he ends up like cutting down Arawn and killing Arawn Deathlord with Dyrnwyn, which ends up stripping Dyrnwyn of all of its magical powers, because that was the prophecy that Dyrnwyn was created for, to destroy the Deathlord. And another reason why Arawn probably hid it away in Mount Dragon, because he didn't want it near him. If someone got it, they could kill him. So the big baddie, Arawn Deathlord, is dead. Ochren is, now turned to the light side. So there's no real massive evil anymore. All of the Sons of Dawn, the High King ended up being killed as well in one of the huge battles, which was devastating and sad, and that's just another one of those sad moments. So what I really appreciated about all of these wars, well, this one war and all these little battles in the war, is that there's consequences. Now remember, this is a children's book, and so to have people that you have cared about for numerous books die off, you're forced to face the idea of death and loss and what that means, not just to the characters, but to you as someone who's grown to either recognize or appreciate these characters, or straight up really love them, as characters. And I really like that. I like that it's forcing you to feel something, because not a lot of books do that. And a lot of kids' books hide consequences from their audience. And I think that's just wrong. That's a wrong approach. Ultimately, the Sons of Dawn were brought to Prydain, or sailed to Prydain from their mystical land. I think it's like Summer Isle or Somerset or something like that, in order to fight the evil that was here in the land. Now that the evil is defeated, they're leaving. All of the magical people, all the enchantresses and enchanters, including Dalbin, and they invite Taran to join them. And Eilenwy's going to be going, and Gurgi was invited to go with him. And Taran decides to stay, and he's like, "No, I've made promises to the Comet folk. I've made promises to King Rune. I'm going to stay, and I'm going to fight and struggle." And Dalbin reveals that in the Book of Three, which is a sort of a prophecy tome, it reveals that Taran is going to be the High King only if he stays and he realizes the sacrifice that he's making. And so, with him willingly making that sacrifice, Dallben acknowledges and tells him, like, look, well, this means that you are now the High King. You need to go and rule Prydain and protect it. And it's not going to be easy, and you're probably going to fail, but you'll have to do it. And so, Eilonwy is completely beside herself and super upset. And Dallben says, look, if you want to stay, you can, but you have to remove all of magic from you. And so she immediately agrees because she loves Taran and she wants to be with him. And so she goes through the ritual of stripping herself of all of her magic. And Dallben marries Taran and Eilonwy, and they go off and fight and struggle and win and love and, live happily ever after, ostensibly. But that is, when I was referring to the Lord of the Rings and the King Arthur myth, there's always this trope of there's a land to the west, far to the west, that is you can live forever, and it's this wonderful land of peace and eternal life and happiness. That's where King Arthur goes. That's where the elves go in Lord of the Rings. That's where the Sons of Dawn in this Chronicles of Prydain go. It's just the same trope always. You have to sail to the west and you will end up in peace. But for those of us who stay in the shit and the muck, we're here fighting and scrapping because that's what life is. Life is only worth anything because of the struggle and because of the relationships and the connections you make along the way. And that's what I love about the decision that Taran ultimately made about staying where he is, staying in Prydain and fighting and becoming the High King. I thought this was a great story. Maybe that's too high praise. This is a really, really good story. I don't know if it was great because, again, it was derivative. But I enjoyed it. I found myself getting emotional again, mentioning it again. And I would recommend it. If anyone wants to read these 5 books, you can read them really quick. They're under 200 pages. The only one that's over 200 pages is the last one, this one, The High King. And so you can burn through them very, very quickly if you're your average speed reader. But I think it is worth exploring them. It's not going to go up as one of my favorite fantasy series, but it's definitely a good one, and I'm glad that I asked for it as a gift because of the film The Black Cauldron from Walt Disney. And I'm glad that I read it, and now I understand where that film got it wrong and, the little elements that it took to make it entertaining and fun and dark. And the truth is you could easily revisit this world, the Chronicles of Prydain, in an adult manner and really dig in because it's got like really vile, evil, and dark shit in this world that would be ripe for exploring as a live action or an animated film that is true to the Chronicles, not the deviation that Walt Disney did. And that would be very, very interesting because you do have all of these different lesser kings fighting for control, land, power, cows in some cases. And you have the High King who has to try to manage all the madness. All the while, you have Arawn Deathlord trying to invade and take over the land. And you have all these legacies of magic and enchanted people and items of magic that are being slowly stripped away. We're being brought to our modern sensibility of everything that was magical is sort of taken away from the land or has voluntarily left and sailed to the west. And so now we're left with mundane life like we know it now. Again, King Arthur tropes, Lord of the Rings tropes. And it's familiar enough that people will buy into it, but it's different enough to feel very steeped in Celtic mythology, Welsh specifically, but also being its own thing and being sort of interesting and exciting. And if you had a very charismatic young man and a very charismatic young woman playing Taran and Eilonwy respectively, you could have anyone play a crazy Gurgi character, and it would be very interesting and fun to explore. So I just think that there's more to tell in an adult context with this Chronicles that was generated exclusively for young adults. And you should definitely check it out if you like fantasy. And if you just want to read something that, it's a little bit different and a little bit interesting, do yourselves a favor, check it out. Ultimately, I gave this 4 evil eyes out of 5 evil eyes. It's not a perfect fantasy story, but But it's good and it's fun and I enjoyed it and I probably won't read it again, but I'll remember it forever. And now when I watch The Black Cauldron, I'll have a different appreciation and understanding of it. And that's cool too. So, thank you guys so much for tuning in. I appreciate your time and attention. And as always, remember that evil spelled backwards is live. So get your asses out there and fucking be evil.